Hi, I'm Lorraine Ollie, and I'm a television critic for the Los Angeles Times. And we are coming to you from inside the Los Angeles Times. And I am here with Ian McShane. Hello, Ian. Thank
Hi,
you.
Lorraine.
So, I wanted to start talking a little bit about the new series American Gods, which is on Starz. And it's an amazing, kind of quirky, strange, weird, wonderful series. And I'm wondering if you could kind of give a breakdown about what it's about.
Well, it was Neil Gaiman's hugely popular book written 16 years ago. And it's more apt now than it probably was then. I mean, it would have been apt at any time. I mean, it's the story of immigrants coming to America. And did they bring their gods with them? The demons they didn't. They were too scared to cross the ocean. But Gaiman believes the gods came with them as protection, like it goes back to Roman times when I think it was a story of, was it Pliny had left and he took his household gods with him, and people would. And this is not to say this is an irreligious show or it's an anti-faith show. It's very much a faith show, I think. It's just saying, it's talking about, have we forgotten now where we were any time in the past, 500 years. If you don't look at the past, if you don't remember what the past is, then you'll be forced to repeat it. That old Santa Ana phrase, and the bad parts too, if you don't remember. Right. So I think he's talking about, gods were good things. They weren't bad things. They prayed for nature, for sacrifice, for winter, for summer, for spring, for rain, for everything. And it helped people get along better. And have we forgotten about that? Do we now just click on, an iPad or whatever it might be and find out what the weather is, what a religion, you'll pay $5 and you'll live forever,
Right,
or pay $5,
right.
you'll be a good Christian forever. What Gaiman's saying is don't ignore what the future is. You can never turn back. The future is the future, as newspapers found out.
Well, yes.
I mean, we do, but absolutely. Everything changes. Technology plows ahead despite what we are. But don't forget about what brought you here. Otherwise, you'll be a lesser person for it. You'll be lesser for it. And all these gods that have been around for years doing ordinary jobs in America. I mean, he's talking about, and I suppose I should go back to the actual story. That's the basis of, I think, the theme of it, in a sense. And where do these gods fit in to the modern world? And they're led by this character, which I play for. And today's Wednesday. It's Wednesday here. It was Wednesday when we started shooting. Wednesday.
You planned it that way.
Well, apparently, yeah. Takes this man called Shadow Moon, played by Ricky Whittle, who's terrific, who's our sort of guide to the whole show, who's an ex-con, picks him up on his first couple of days out of prison, is going back to see his wife's funeral, and gradually realize, it's not by chance. Mr. Wednesday represents a little more than that, and introduces Shadow to this weird and wonderful cast of characters as they go around for the first 3 episodes, like a road movie. Buddy movie, road movie, but there's more behind it. And nothing is ever as it seems. It's all reveal, reveal, reveal. And it's a sense of, the byways and not the highways, the byways of America.
Right.
The towns that, like the famous bar, which I think there's going to be one in every town in America, Crocodile Jack's bar.
Right.
Which is where the sort of main action takes place at the end of episode 1. But it's this commingling of America, and I'm an immigrant, Gaiman's an immigrant, most people here are immigrants. It's about the immigrant experience being a good one.
Right.
Not
right.
a bad one. Not a bad one, because people come here, obviously, to have a better life, not to be miserable,
Right.
Nobody turns, nobody goes east. It's interesting, isn't it? People don't usually emigrate east. They emigrate
True, right.
west, if you take the flat look at the world, or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, what's so great about the show is that there's also this battle, between the old gods and the new gods. The new gods being, or the new thing people worship, technology, media, that kind of thing. And the old gods are really fallible. I mean, they have these, old sort of conflicts between them. Like your character is sort of making money on the side as a con man.
Oh, he's as capricious and as willful as any of the gods that he's railing against. He says she'll have a better time with him.
Right.
That's what his version is. Wednesdays, you'll have a better time with me. You'll also, you won't get steeped in, you'll get steeped in the history of humanity rather than the future of nothingness, like what Mr. World represents, or the media. But looking forward to the battle. He wants a fight. I mean, there's a great line later on, I think it's in the 7th episode with Vulcan, when he says, when Vulcan says, he said, yeah, but I'm better than they are. I'm more interesting, I'm more fun, whatever.
Right.
But, and also I believe in humanity. I believe in people. I believe in the small acts of life, not in just looking at something and going ahead and say, oh, yeah, that's it, a click, which we have all grown a little bit familiar with.
Yeah.
Well, it's a natural thing.
Right.
People
right.
go back. But, I mean, faith is always there. It's a very, if you have no faith, then you're what is it? You're destined for the frustration of the faithless, I think he says at one point,
Right.
which is true.
Yeah.
Then you become an old cynic like me in real life. No.
But your character in there, Mr. Wednesday, when you were reading Neil Gaiman's novel and you saw Mr. Wednesday in there, because what you bring to that character in the series, he's kind of part used car salesman, but then he's also really charismatic. You sense there's something really important about him, but then he's really kind of sleazy. I mean, did you see that in the character?
I think a God embodies everything, and that's what he
Yeah.
is. If you take him, Wednesday's the old Wotan's Day, Wednesday, in European terms, your Norse mythology. But he represents everything, and he's not afraid of anything. The great thing I loved about Wednesday when I read him, and then as I got to know him as we worked on the show, was he's up for anything. He also does not turn his back on anything. He looks at everything. He's also enjoys everything, be it food, drink, women, conversation, laughter, funny. And he's also a bit of a know-all, and he said, I tend to get my own way because I'm rather, in the end, I have faith. I have faith in people, and they tend to have faith in me. When he talks about the plane, is it Newton? Is it Newton's theory? Is it faith? So he constantly asks questions, and he's fun to be around. And,
Right.
and Ricky and I found a way. I mean, the first scene we shot was the airplane scene, which whether by design or by production necessity, doesn't matter. It was a great thing to do because it
when
was
you
like
first
make a break
meet, yeah.
when we first meet in the actual show and when we first met on the set. So it was a great way to start because then we knew each other and we could sort of then progress by shorthand from then on. Ricky,
Right.
because a lot depends on our relationship in the show,
Right.
on our rapport, and I think we do pretty well together,
Yeah, and you have also been known for playing characters that have, I wouldn't say they're not the typical bad guys. There's something
Complicated people.
Okay, there you go. Complicated people.
I think that started, with back in the sort of start of the talk about the golden era of television, back in the end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, with HBO, with the shows about the one I was involved with, Deadwood,
Right.
but also like Oz, which tends to have been forgotten a little bit. Shouldn't? It's a great show,
Yeah,
phenomenal
it was
show.
great.
Oz, The Wire, The Sopranos.
Right.
Which was taking The Sopranos, Tony Soprano was your classic, complicated characters. I mean, it's a family guy, just a family business, just having
Right.
something that most of us would never be involved with, but that's the dynamic, and brilliantly done. So but the audience has sympathy for, like Al. I can compare Al to that Swearingen in Deadwood, that he was a rounded person, but he became more. But I think Wednesday is imbued that with from the beginning because he's an old god. So he
Right.
comes fully formed. The first time you see him, he comes fully formed. In that scene in the plane, he comes fully formed like, listen to me, blah, blah, blah. He'd have a drink, and then he insults him, and then he goes back again. And it's like Shadow is overwhelmed. And that's what Wednesday tends to do. But he also is a very, he's a very optimistic guy. Otherwise, he couldn't possibly exist if he wasn't optimistic.
After all these thousands
After all
of years.
these 100, whatever, however long he's been, whatever form he's taken before,
Right. It's interesting. I reviewed the show. I love the show.
Thank you. I thank you.
I
I'm really
really
glad
loved
you
it.
did. Thank you.
And I got letters from readers that were, how would I say it? They're probably like ancient history buffs. Like they know a lot about Greek mythology, about Roman gods, which clearly I wasn't paying attention in class because they were schooling me. And I'm wondering, have you gotten anybody sort of talking to you that's, because it's a whole world of geekdom around that, of people really being into it.
Well, I think that Gaiman encourages that. That's one of his great gifts as a writer and as a communicator, that he does love to communicate and intermingle with his fans and their opinions of his stories. He's not a shy, reclusive author who puts it out there and says, it's up to you. He says, no, it's up to you, but I'm here to talk about it. And he
Right.
enjoys that. Much like David Milch with on Deadwood, he enjoys,
Right.
they're both sort of, he comes from journalism, Gaiman. Milch comes from the world of, teaching. He was a top, professor. So they love engaging in ideas and love talking about what they did and what they do and how they project it into the audience. And I think with Michael Green, who I worked with before, on an equally interesting show called Kings, which was about what if America was a kingdom. And it was basically the story of King Saul and David. And I played King Saul, who was an ex sort of warrior who'd become king of America. And his brother was like a sort of boss of the industrial complex. But it was short-lived, but that was because it was on NBC, and it was a terrestrial TV program. And they're just not equipped to do this kind of show. Not
Right.
because they couldn't do it, but the very audience, the very fact they need to do 25 shows a year, and they need to basically have the same show every week with a twist in it.
Right.
Because it's not the same kind of audience you're dealing with. And I think Brian Fuller, who's had series before on TV, has found his natural home.
Right.
That he can give vent to all his fantastical ideas, and Green can write in full form, and the two of them together can project on what the blueprint that Gaiman came up with, which is this. I read the book and I'd done one of his books before, Coraline, which is an animated movie, beautifully done by Henry Selick, but this seemed to me like a perfect blueprint for a TV series to expand upon and to have those wonderful standalone stories like you do in episode 4, which give you actually a sort of a background to the show and also give you a sense of what's going to happen. In other words, instead of having interminable, an actor give you, a rundown on what's going on, a backstory.
Boom,
Well, I
boom,
hate
yeah.
back. It doesn't start with a backstory. Characters just come on, there they are, formed.
Right.
And then you gradually find out as you go through the show. So you have to pay attention, pay attention.
Oh, there's
But it's true. No,
there's a lot of mystery.
There's a lot
there's
of mystery. It's a lot of
to it.
fun.
Right.
The characters get more, you meet more gods as we go on. They get filled out. You get more standalone stories. And
Right.
no, I hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen it until they showed it at, I hadn't seen any of it. I'm not one of those actors that goes to Rushes or,
okay.
or goes to Video Village.
Right.
Oh, what was I like in that? No.
There I am.
You get there? Oh, look at me. I got the job. Thank you. No, but when I did see it, because this is a show that depends on bells and whistles. I mean, special effects. It's not, you couldn't do it without it. The special effects, the sort of, the telling of the coming to America sequence at the beginning.
Right.
But I had no idea what it was going to look like. So when I saw it down at South by Southwest for the first time in front of an audience on a big screen, I thought, oh, wow, yeah.
The special effects are beautiful.
Yeah, they're
in
beautiful.
that.
They're brilliant. And
Yeah.
it was like saying, you look at that and you go, oh, yeah, it's a show that, yeah, I'd love, it's a show that you now find easy to talk about because you like it.
Right. Right.
It's like that, but you've done a few things that you don't necessarily want. I mean, you don't knock them, but
Right.
you don't go out of your way. But this, because I enjoyed it like I did that. I enjoyed it for lots of other reasons, and I got a job, you know what I mean? It's like saying, wow, it's out there. It's bold, it's brave, it's out there. And a lot of shows say they push the envelope. I think this one does push the envelope for TV.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, Deadwood did the same thing, and what you had mentioned earlier about the terrestrial, the network TV series. I think when Deadwood was happening, it was popular, but it wasn't massive.
No.
And it's looking back on it that people realize kind of what a breakthrough series that was. And I think one of the reasons is that it really kind of broke the mold, like The Sopranos did, of what you expect from a weekly series. And I don't know, when you were doing it, did you have a sense there was going to be that kind of importance around it?
No, I don't think you ever have that sense when you're doing it, even, or even like with this, you sense it's great material.
Right.
And and wonderful to work on. But when you're doing it, no, it's just like, it's fascinating. I love the job, I love going to work. I love going to a film set in the morning. I love getting up. I love the whole routine, going there. And then it's like, you do your crazy shit, whatever, all day, and then you come home to a rather ordinary existence. It's kind of nice. That's what you do. But when you're there working, it's like anything goes. And it's a wonderful way to work. And that was very much in Deadwood's case, because we were able to do it because we filmed at this place called the Gene Autry Studios up in Santa Clarita. It's only a half an hour drive,
Oh,
but it's a
okay.
self-contained unit.
Yeah.
So all the editors were there, all the writers were there, the sets were there. But I think they only went on location one day a year, you know. So
Right.
it was like David, who was the creative genius behind it, could change anything he wanted at any given time. And the actors were only an hour and a half away, maybe, if they wanted another
Right.
actor, whatever, to bring in from out of town. And everybody loved being there, quite honestly. It was and like this, I mean, people came on and material was fascinating
Wow.
to work on. So it's always great when it's like that. And when you've got showrunners, this was a little more difficult because Deadwood didn't have the kind of special effects. But so on this you're going, but I knew Fuller's work from before and the kind of the imagery that he evokes and
Right.
what he looks at. And Michael I worked with, you know, textually, so I knew the kind of writing. And they sort of gelled together and it was exciting. But when you saw it, you go, yeah, that's why you join, you know.
Right, right.
That's why it's a thrill.
I mean, and you've had a really long career.
Yeah.
And it's in case you didn't know that, I just
I
thought
know,
would
no,
bring
it's
that
funny
up.
you suddenly go back to your
Yeah.
first movie, you know.
But you know, it doesn't usually work this way. Where, you know, I feel at least on the American viewer's radar, you've become more and more of a figure later in your career. I mean, usually it's the flip way around.
Kind of nice, isn't it?
It's
No, it's
lovely.
fantastic. No, it's really a nice thing. Starting with, I mean, you've been known. I've been working here on and off, and I've lived here on and off. My wife's American. We've lived here on and off for like 40 years. But I go back. My kids are in England. My grandkids are there. My mom's still alive there. But yeah, but it's like I'm known there for this series I produced and directed and did called Lovejoy, which was on A&E, which was a kind of nice. It was a Sunday night show. But, you know, before that I'd done like, you know, I mean, with Zeffirelli I'd played Judas. I'd done The Life of Disraeli on Masterpiece Theatre, the classic, and the theatre
Wow.
at Broadway 50 years ago. Ian McKellen, Judy Dench, and I did a Russian play called The Promise. I was just remembering it the other day. I was
Wow.
remembering it in New York last week, and I bumped into Joel Grey. And I saw him in Cabaret. It was the same year that we opened, 1967. So it's been great.
Wow.
And to have this kind of later on, yeah, it's great. It's kind of great. Yeah.
And what did you think when I mean, what was your inspiration going into acting? Was it something in your family? Was it
Not
something
at all.
just
No,
a
I didn't have
drive?
any inspiration except my I got it. I didn't get inspired. I got kind of like I kind of like it was sort of in you in some way. It was. I mean, I came from a very. My dad's a professional soccer player for Manchester United. He was in the
Oh,
50s,
wow.
and I was a kid at drama. I was a grammar school, very happily playing soccer. Sadly, not as well as my dad. So I never. When people say, "Oh, you should have been," I said, "No, I shouldn't. I was okay, but I wasn't that kind of okay."
No, that
you know,
shouldn't
no,
have
no.
happened.
But it also helps you to know, I think, about that when you're your age. You know, so my dad was a great guy. I mean, he's fab. He never pushed me to be a footballer, but I did a play at school when I was like, I don't know, about 13, and this teacher said. He was a geography teacher. I mean, you didn't have drama teachers then. They just did it in spare time. And everybody joined in the school play, whether it building the sets or whatever.
Yeah.
And we did a show, and I did it. And he said, next year I'm going to do a show for you. It's called Cyrano de Bergerac, and you're going to play Cyrano. It was like I said, oh, thank you, sir. Can I go and play soccer now, football, whatever? And next year we did it. And it was sort of a mini kind of caused a bit of a stir in the local. It was very well received. He was a smart guy, and the show was good. And they wanted to take it on tour, but we couldn't, whatever. Anyway, National Theatre of Britain were on tour, and I auditioned for them because the guy who started it, Michael Croft, was from Manchester. And I went down to London and did played a small part in Henry IV Part 1 that summer. But it was like, came back and then worked in a department store for the summer and make some money, whatever.
Right.
And then auditioned for RADA. And he said to me, I think you should audition for RADA, you know. You went to my parents, because I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Right.
And so we went down. I auditioned for RADA with my mum. We had a day in London, and we came out. And then I got a letter a month later saying, "We've accepted you. If you pay your fees." And luckily, I'd passed university entrance, which meant if you'd passed it in those days, they actually they gave you a grant like they did for university. So they
Oh,
gave
right,
because
okay.
drama school has never been cheap. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was it isn't, especially now. It's only the rich boys can afford to go there because they no longer
Right.
get grants. But then it was like, and it was also the beginning of the sort of working class period of lads like Albert Finney Peter O'Toole had already made
okay.
it, and I was sort of, I was younger than that, but on the tail end of that. So
You had to see that ahead of
60s.
you, and that's
So I went to London
yeah.
in the 60s and had the 60s in London. It was like part of a whole, oh, wow.
Wow.
And drama school was all about, you know, learning how to meet girls and have a drink. Because no, it's true when you're 17. I went
Right.
when I did my first movie, I left early with Johnny Hurt, my dearest friend. We had a flat together at drama school, and he left to do a movie and suggested me for this movie. And I auditioned for it, and they said, yeah, we'd love to have you. So I left drama school a term early. They threatened not to give me my certificate.
Did you ever?
Rather
Did you
that.
get it?
Rather like that. No, oh yeah, rather like you can act. I said, what do you mean certificate saying you can act? It was signed by Sir John Gielgud. And years later, he was in a Lovejoy with me. And I said, Sir John, I brought it in. I said, you see, you said I could act, Sir John, so I must be all right. Sir John Gielgud, a lot of you wouldn't have heard of him, but he was one of our greats. It's true, though, you know, and a lot of kids now have never heard of people, these giants of acting. Like in their 35-year-old, and they'll say, who's John Gielgud? Who's Laurence Olivier? Who's Ralph Richardson?
Wow.
You want to say, well, look at a few old movies. You know,
Right,
you'll be
right.
better off.
So we have some questions from
Yeah.
people who are watching us live right now, and I am going to very unstealthily here pick up the iPad. Okay, so Luke on Facebook asks, how do you create your understanding of how to play a character when that character is an ancient Norse god?
You think like an old Norse god. Have you never done that? You know, I called myself Olaf for a week, wore a beard, dressed in rags, and ate live flesh birds, and chanted to the old gods of Norse, and went to an island, lived on my own, and drank water from a well. Isn't that what everybody does when you prepare for a part? Very easy to do.
Well, I know I have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure, of course. Then Liam asks, what is the best thing a director can do for you on set?
Stay out of my way and come in when necessary.
Right.
No, it's interesting. The dynamic you have with the director, especially, is that you know, most directors, if they've cast you, they've cast you for the reason that you bring to it. So if you're going to start arguing on the set from the day one, neither of you have done your homework. So you both have a knowledge of what you want. He obviously you know what you want to do, and you know what you want to do. So there should be a shorthand between the director and you,
Right.
without getting in the way, unless they're one of those, you know, directors we won't talk about.
And I'm not asking you to name names, but how many times have you had to deal with one of those directors you don't want to talk about? And in a long career, I'm assuming you've run into that more often than not. And was it discouraging? Not just that at any point, but just, you know,
It's just to get through it. It's when you look at directing and think, Jesus, I got another 19 weeks of this. You know, so then you either turn to drugs or great hotel food.
Another fan asks, when you choose a project, what excites you most, the characters or the scripts?
Oh, I think always the script, because it's a question of like, I mean, I think it's very easy. There's an old line about, and I've said it, used it, but I always think it works. Milton Berle, who's Uncle Milty, the famous cat. For those of you who don't remember Milton Berle, you'll look him up on Facebook. But he said a great thing about the business. He said once about better to be shit in a hit than a hit in shit. It's a funny thing to say, but it's like saying, oh, it's all very well being good in a show that does no good. So you'll be starved. Oh, it was great. The show was terrible. Like, you were great. That doesn't work. It's really
Right.
not. It's a sort of it's kind of makes sense. Great in a show that nobody likes, what does that mean?
Right.
But if a show likes, a show that people love, everybody gets benefits from it.
Right.
If it's a show that nobody, and also, but that's what it's about. It's a project. It's easy to be flash and whatever, and to take on a character in certain, you know, and we've all done it. You've done shows for the money, you've done shows for other reasons, but not expecting at the end of it. But at the end of like Deadwood, no, you know it's a great show. The
Right.
benefits from it were suddenly it explodes, as you say, like doing this. If you know what you're doing when you're doing it, I doubt very much the end will be a sort of a wonderful surprise in a gifted way. I mean, I think that, you know, the build-up to American Gods was enough. It was a great book. People loved it. You had a certain amount of people that will love it no matter what. A certain amount of people that will argue with it, which is good because of the source material. But the project, I don't think, as I said, when I started, I thought, oh yeah, that's a real, we're not making a novel, we're making a
Right.
TV. I don't think you should ever lose sight of that. You're trying to entertain people. You're not making a polemic. You're not making an op-ed. You're making a show that will hopefully deal with those higher things we talk about, life,
Right.
philosophy, metaphysical life, and whatever, but will also be enjoyable and entertaining. And if you have to wait for a while, that'll happen because every show takes its own course.
Right.
But I don't think you ever sit, no, if I read it, I read it for the script. Whenever I read anything, I read it for the material first, and then for the character afterwards.
Right. And you know, the great thing about American Gods too is that, you know, I didn't know, I mean, I knew of the book, but I hadn't read it, and it wasn't like I was a huge fan of it. I jumped into it, I kind of wanted to jump into it cold. I didn't want to read Neil's book. I wanted to see, what's this going to be like for somebody jumping in cold? And it's amazing. I mean, it's not like you have
great.
to already, you know, be a fan of the books to understand the
I don't think
series
so.
at
No,
all.
but I think there's a certain amount of that. You know, people who love the book. Like, I mean, I knew of the book, and I'd never read it. And I know Neil, but he's a very prolific author. I mean, you know, he's probably writing 9 books even as we speak. But as you said, I read it and dived in. I thought, wow, it's really interesting. It's really fascinating, you know. And if they can, but again, if you'd filmed it as the book, because it's all an interior monologue in Shadow's head.
Right.
So the way they expanded on it, Green and Fuller have created this, I think, rather fantastic visual world as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all that coming to America sequences. I mean, I think this week people will love it when Orlando Jones breaks out that amazing Coming to America, which blew me away. I must
That
wear
was
but
amazing,
yeah,
yeah.
it's really, Orlando's fantastic. in it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's relevant, but, you know, when they did it, I know that the guys on the, you know, there was a standing ovation, which there should have been. But it's an extraordinary piece, and it comes at you, like, wow. And then the show goes in not another direction, just takes off. But the show constantly reminds you what it's about and what it's not about.
Right. Right.
Then you take it all as it comes. So it's, I loved it. And the blood is beautiful, isn't it?
So much blood.
Didn't I get so much blood? So much beautiful blood.
I just have a few of our lightning round questions that I wanted to ask. What was the last show that you binge watched?
Oh, I'm at Atlanta, I love.
Oh, okay.
Atlanta,
yeah.
and there's a show on which there's one episode of it I saw, which Budding Prospects, with a guy called Terry Zwigoff, who I know is a great director. About 2 guys who take off to grow dope. It's on, what's it on? I think it's on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
It's only done a pilot, but that's good. Obviously, what else did I watch? Mr. Robot? Yeah.
That's
I'm
great.
binge watching that, and there's another show which I can't remember. But the half hours at the moment, I'm saving the hours. They're been too busy at the moment to get into hour shows, but the half-hour shows I've been
They're a
looking at.
commitment for sure.
Oh, they are,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you can't just dash one off, you
No.
know.
No,
But I
right.
remember I watched Breaking Bad. I binge watched that for 1 week. I had to stay here for a week. 2 years ago, was it 2, 3 years? Yeah, and I watched the whole thing. I was like, oh yeah, I got it. Phenomenal show.
So good.
Mr. Chips Goes Gangster. What a great concept. I know, but really, that's what he was, you know.
Go
Fantastic
Scarface,
idea.
yes. If you could go back and be on any classic show, what would it be?
Oh, I think The Honeymooners.
Wow, who would you be on The Honeymooners?
I don't know. Maybe I'd be, because I love art and I love Jackie Gleason. I think Jackie Gleason's one of those people, you know, he's like one of my favorite actors. He's indescribable what he does. Gleason is one of those amazing performers. Like Ernie Kovacs.
Yes.
Another name for you to go back and look at in your book. But another originator of television.
Right.
Total original. Did what he did. You can't categorize them. You can't put them in a box.
Right.
You know, and you'd love to be part of that. Or, well, I got to do a Western. I'd never got to do a Western before. I'm quite happy being Mr. Wednesday at the moment.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I think we're going to have to wrap up, but I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you for being here. And if you want to see more of these, go to latimes.com.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. And thanks, guys.
Thank you.